Tensions in the Persian Gulf have erupted into open conflict, sending shockwaves across the globe and raising fears of a major regional war. The United States and Iran now find themselves locked in a dangerous standoff, with both sides exchanging threats and military maneuvers in these strategic waters. A series of brazen attacks on commercial oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, widely attributed to Iranian forces, have not only damaged vessels, but also sent oil prices soaring and threatened the lifeblood of the global economy. Around the world, millions watched in disbelief as the risk of a catastrophic war grew by the hour, the culmination of years of simmering hostility now boiling over into open confrontation. The international community responded with urgent calls for restraint, condemning the attacks and warning that any closure of the strait could trigger a global economic crisis, disrupting energy supplies and destabilizing markets everywhere. For years, Washington and Tehran have clashed indirectly, through harsh sanctions, cyber attacks, and proxy wars fought in neighboring countries. But now, the conflict has spilled into direct military engagement, raising the stakes for both nations and their allies. Every ship that enters the Strait of Hormuz is now under intense scrutiny, with military patrols and surveillance at an all-time high. The entire region is gripped by anxiety, uncertain of what the next day might bring. Ordinary people across the Middle East, already weary from years of instability and conflict, find themselves once again living under the shadow of a great power struggle, their daily lives disrupted by the threat of war. The initial skirmishes at sea, marked by explosions and tense encounters between warships, suggest that a prolonged and potentially devastating conflict may be unfolding before the world's eyes. As the crisis deepens, the world holds its breath, hoping for a diplomatic breakthrough that could prevent further bloodshed, but bracing for the possibility of a much wider and more destructive war in the Gulf. In response to the attacks on international shipping, President Donald Trump authorized a major military operation against Iran, marking one of the most consequential decisions of his presidency. The world watched as the White House moved swiftly, with Trump convening his top advisors and military leaders in the Situation Room to weigh the risks and potential fallout. In a televised address, he declared that the United States would not tolerate threats to global commerce or acts of war against civilian vessels. Trump emphasized that the safety of international shipping lanes was not just an American concern, but a matter of global security, vital to the world economy and the stability of allied nations. The order was clear: neutralize the Iranian threat and restore stability to the region. Military commanders were given broad authority to act decisively, with the Pentagon mobilizing assets across the Middle East. Intelligence teams worked around the clock, analyzing potential Iranian responses and preparing for a range of scenarios. Trump cited the tanker attacks as a red line, framing the response as essential to protect the global economy and U.S. allies. He argued that inaction would only embolden further aggression, and that America had a responsibility to lead. His decision reflected a foreign policy of strength and decisive action, aiming to deter further Iranian aggression. Trump's approach was unapologetically forceful, signaling to both allies and adversaries that the U.S. would respond with overwhelming power when provoked. U.S. forces in the region were placed on high alert, with assets repositioned for a significant engagement. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, and fighter squadrons were moved into strategic positions, ready to launch operations at a moment's notice. This was not a symbolic strike, but a campaign designed to cripple Iran's ability to threaten shipping in the Gulf. The operation was meticulously planned, with precision strikes targeting key military infrastructure and command centers. The message to Tehran was unmistakable: hostile actions would have severe consequences. U.S. officials warned that any retaliation would be met with even greater force, leaving no doubt about America's resolve. The world now watches as the full weight of the American military is brought to bear. Allies voiced support, while adversaries braced for the possibility of escalation, and global markets reacted to the uncertainty. The stakes are high, and the outcome will shape the future of the Middle East. Diplomats scrambled to contain the crisis, as leaders from around the world called for restraint and dialogue. The decision marks a turning point in U.S.-Iran relations, setting the stage for a new and uncertain chapter in the region's history. The conflict erupted suddenly in the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow but crucial waterway that serves as the gateway for nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil. This strategic choke point has long been a flashpoint for international tensions, but this time, the stakes were higher than ever before. Every day, massive oil tankers navigate these waters, carrying millions of barrels of crude oil to markets across the globe. The Strait is a vital artery for global oil, and any disruption here sends shockwaves through the world economy. Suddenly, Iranian forces launched attacks on several oil tankers, setting them ablaze and creating chaos in the already crowded shipping lane. The world watched in alarm as smoke billowed over the horizon and shipping traffic ground to a halt. In response, the U.S. Navy and its allies surged into the region, deploying powerful fleets to protect commercial vessels and keep the Strait open for international trade. Their presence was a clear signal that freedom of navigation would be defended at all costs. Tensions soared as warships from both sides maneuvered dangerously close, locked in a tense standoff where a single miscalculation could spark a wider war. The most dramatic moment came when U.S. forces, acting on intelligence, launched a decisive strike and sank 9 Iranian warships, including the formidable Jamaran-class corvette. The sea erupted in fire and debris, marking a turning point in the battle. These Iranian vessels were reportedly laying deadly mines and threatening to target any ship that dared to pass, escalating the danger for all maritime traffic in the area. The U.S. response was swift and overwhelming, showcasing not only advanced weaponry but also superior tactics and coordination. High-tech systems tracked threats in real time, and precision strikes neutralized enemy positions. Instead of backing down, the international community rallied together. Naval forces from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East joined the effort, forming a united front to defend freedom of navigation and deter further aggression. The battle was not just about warships and missiles, it was about control over a vital economic lifeline. The outcome would affect energy prices, global trade, and the stability of entire regions. Iran's attempt to dominate the Strait was met with decisive and overwhelming force, sending a message that the world would not tolerate threats to this critical passage. The waters of the Strait of Hormuz became a combat zone, with sailors and commanders on edge, and the world anxiously awaiting the next move in this high-stakes confrontation. The outcome of this battle would determine not only the fate of global trade, but also the balance of power and stability in the region for years to come. The Pentagon launched Operation Epic Fury, a large-scale campaign to dismantle Iran's offensive capabilities. The mission restores security to the Strait of Hormuz and prevent future disruptions to maritime traffic. U.S. forces targeted Iranian naval assets, missile batteries, and surveillance systems. The operation aimed to guarantee the safety of commercial vessels and uphold freedom of navigation. Beyond the immediate threat, Epic Fury sought to degrade Iran's military infrastructure, including command centers and air defenses. The strategy disrupted Iran's ability to coordinate and launch attacks. The operation's launch signaled America's commitment to a sustained campaign, not just limited strikes. As Epic Fury commenced, a volatile new chapter in the conflict began. Under Operation Epic Fury, U.S. forces unleashed devastating strikes on key Iranian targets. The focus, crippling Iran's navy and military infrastructure. U.S. air power destroyed naval headquarters and heavily damaged Iran's ability to regroup at sea. Advanced B-2 bombers struck underground missile facilities, neutralizing Iran's long-range attack capabilities. Command and control centers were hit to disrupt Iranian military coordination. Airfields and air defense systems were targeted to establish American air superiority. The scale and precision of the assault were unmatched, using stealth technology and guided munitions. The message: the U.S. could strike anywhere in Iran, dismantling its military piece by piece. The initial waves of Epic Fury demonstrated overwhelming American firepower. Iran's ability to threaten the Gulf was severely diminished. The world saw the U.S. military's resolve and technological edge. The campaign aimed for swift, decisive results. The region braced for Iran's response. Despite heavy losses, Iran retaliated with a barrage of missiles and armed drones. Hundreds of projectiles targeted U.S. military positions across the Middle East. While many were intercepted, some struck their targets, causing the first American casualties: 3 killed, 5 wounded. Iran's Iranian attacks proved its offensive capabilities were not entirely destroyed. The human cost of war became real for the American public. Iran claimed to have hit a U.S. aircraft carrier, but American officials denied any damage. Both sides engaged in an information war, each seeking to control the narrative. The conflict escalated beyond the Gulf, spreading fear and uncertainty. The stakes and the risks rose dramatically. War's true toll is measured in human lives. The U.S. mourned its first casualties, 3 service members killed, 5 wounded. For Iran, the losses were far greater, over 200 killed, hundreds more injured. Each casualty represents a family changed forever. Rumors swirled that Iran's supreme leader may have been killed, adding to the chaos. The possibility of a power vacuum threatened further instability. Civilians across the region faced fear, disruption, and economic hardship. The psychological and economic impact would linger long after the fighting stopped. The cost of war extended far beyond the battlefield. The US-Iran conflict sent shockwaves through the global economy. Oil prices surged as the Strait of Hormuz became a war zone, raising costs worldwide. Diplomatically, the world was divided. US allies called for restraint, while rivals condemned American action. The war tested America's military, economy, and alliances, shaping perceptions of its power. For Iran, survival was at stake. The regime faced internal and external threats. The conflict risked spiraling into a wider regional war, with catastrophic consequences. The outcome would reshape Iran's future and its place in the world. The world watched, aware that the fate of an entire region hung in the balance. Every decision carried global repercussions. The stakes had never been higher. As Operation Epic Fury's first phase ends, the Gulf's future remains uncertain. Escalation could draw in neighboring countries and cause massive suffering. A stalemate might lead to a frozen conflict, with ongoing instability and proxy wars. There's a slim hope for diplomacy, if both sides seek a way out after the shock of war. The death or incapacitation of Iran's supreme leader could reshape the conflict's trajectory. The world hopes leaders choose peace over further destruction. The next decisions will determine the fate of the Gulf for years to come.